Darius and Girenas, World War I U.S. Army veterans, will remain forever alive in Lithuanian nation's memory due to their lives and flight over the Atlantic. The tragic flight of Darius and Girenas is significant insofar as they covered a distance of 3,984 miles without landing for 37 hours. Though Darius and Girenas had no navigation equipment and flew under unfavorable weather conditions, the flight made by the airmen was one of the most precise in all aviation history at that time. Steponas Darius, known as Stepan Darius, born on January 8, 1896 in Lithuania. Steponas Darius joined the U.S. Army in 1917. He served in France and was awarded the Purple Heart and Great War for Civilization medals. While living in Lithuania, he completed aviation training. In 1927, he returned to the USA and started working in civil aviation. Stasys Girenas, known as Stanley Girenas, also had similar background. He was born on October 4, 1893 in Lithuania, educated in Chicago and servicing in the U.S. Army in World War I. In 1931, he won the main prize in Chicago Air Festival for the best landing of the plane with its engine turned off. Darius and Girenas teamed up in 1932 and formed a flying partnership. They purchased a Polvo Key Airport, a used Belanca pacemaker plane from the Chicago Daily News. With the additional funds, Darius and Girenas were able to purchase a new and more powerful engine, make alterations to the wings, add additional fuel tanks and install stronger landing gear with larger tires to help carry an extra weight. After going through this expense, there was no extra money available to purchase the latest navigation equipment, a radio or a controllable pitch propeller. Even without these items, Darius and Girenas were confident that their mission would succeed. The plane was named Lituanica because it represented all Lithuanian interests, ideas and culture. After test flights, the plane was kept at Standard Oil hangar in Airport Midway. Representatives from various Lithuanian organizations and newspapers held a meeting in the Lithuanian consulate offices in Chicago. Committees of flight sponsors were organized in many other Lithuanian communities throughout the United States. To raise enough money was no easy task, since the United States at that time was in the middle of the Great Depression. The fund raised approximately $4,200. On May 6, 1933, the airplane was christened at Chicago's Municipal Airport, now called Midway. During the christening ceremonies, Darius' mother, Mrs. Anna DeGoodis, carried out the traditional honors by smashing a champagne bottle on the propeller hub. The following morning, Lituanica left and headed east for its date with destiny. The pilots landed at Newark Airport in New Jersey.
Darius on the left and Girenas take off an hour later from the same field.
Transoceanic flying isn't very difficult if you have proper equipment and proper training. I think that our trip from New York to Kaunas, Lithuania shouldn't be very difficult.
Many newspapermen and cameramen were already there to witness takeoff on July 15th. Lituanica began fully loaded with fuel and oil, drinking water, coffee, sandwiches, fruit, some tools and the bag of mail. With Darius at the controls, Lituanica started its engine and began its long journey to Kaunas. The engine roared at full power as it began to roll down the runway. Those who witnessed the takeoff began to feel uneasy and were alarmed because the airplane was approaching the end of the mile-long runway and was still not airborne. Finally, 10 feet from the edge of Jamaica Bay, the Lituanica slowly cleared the water by a few feet as it slowly began to gain altitude. The disaster, which almost took place in New York, took place 37 hours later in the forest of Salt in Germany. Darius and Girėnas were only 404 miles short, or less than 4 hours of flying time from reaching Kaunas. The catastrophe occurred due to difficult weather conditions combined with engine defects. Even though they failed to achieve their goal, they conquered the Atlantic Ocean, which was a feat in itself. Their flight was second longest in the history of aviation at that time, as far as distance was concerned. They were the first to carry airmail to Europe. Their courage and determination to fly non-stop to Kaunas regardless of the dangers involved made them national heroes and set an example for the youth of Lithuania to follow. A grief-stricken nation memorialized for fallen heroes in many ways. Shortly after tragedy, members of the flight committee decided to build in Chicago a monument honoring the pilots. Monument was unveiled on July 28, 1935. Many streets, bridges, and squares were named after them. Musical pieces and poetry were written, sculptures and medals were made, and postage stamps were issued to honor them. On June 14, 1933, the Lithuanian government introduced its national currency, the litas, and one of its denominations honors Darius and Girėnas. The Balzekas Museum of the Lithuanian Culture has one of the largest collections of Darius and Girėnas artifacts, maps, and personal items. On July 17, 1993, commemorating the 60th anniversary of Darius and Girėnas transatlantic flight, the representatives from the Lithuanian organizations in the state of Illinois unveiled the plaque at the Midway Airport in Chicago.